Matt mentioned Section 230. So let's get into this because yesterday, and I watched the whole thing because I was covering it. Yesterday was the big, yet another big tech hearing, congressional hearing on big tech with CEOs from Facebook, which is Mark Zuckerberg, Twitter, Jack Dorsey, and Google/Alphabet, which is Sundar Pichai. And they basically, via Zoom or whatever remote app they use on Capitol Hill, basically called in. And, this was ostensibly on Section 230. For those of you who don't know, Section 230 is basically the law that's part of the Communications Act that allows platforms to basically take user-generated content, allow it to be published on their platform, and they can't be held legally liable for it as long as it doesn't break, obviously, federal criminal laws. They have to remove things like, child pornography, drug sales, things like, things of that nature, copyright infringement. But when it comes to people's opinions, things that could cross over maybe into like slander, if argued by the right lawyer, they generally can allow that sort of stuff and not be held legally liable for it. Addendum, the user who posts that stuff would be held legally liable, not the platform that gave that person a place to post that stuff. But anyway, this big tech hearing was on Section 230, and Republicans used it as yet another way to attack the tech CEOs for supposed, and I would like to add unfounded, and I'd like to underline that, italicize that, bold it, unfounded claims of anti-conservative bias. And they've done this multiple times. Every time they get these big tech CEOs in the hot seat, there's so much to hit these guys for: antitrust, monopolies, other regulation, ways that they other content moderation things, such as the flow of misinformation and hate speech on their platforms. But these guys spend the time to basically talk about how their posts aren't being shared as much as they'd like their post to be shared, which is ludicrous. You guys might have seen Don Jr. complaining that the Instagram gods weren't allowing his Instagram videos to be spread as much as they usually do. And the video he was talking about literally had like 250,000 views. That's what he was disappointed with, only 250,000 views. And so, Ted Cruz pushed this as like a boxing match. He had promoted it with these graphics pitting him against Jack Dorsey. And his big thing was what Twitter did to the Hunter Biden New York Post story. And Twitter has actually come out and said that they accept they were wrong in their initial reaction. And I agree with that. They basically outright banned the New York Post story from being published in their tweets for that day, basically while they had fact checkers look into it. That was a bad move. They shouldn't have outright banned it. Facebook had the better response, in which they basically restricted the flow of it being shared. Basically, if you saw it, you could share it, but the Facebook algorithms weren't going to push it in your feeds until it got fact checked. But the way it was promoted was basically the Republicans using it to basically boast to their own supporters, look what we're doing to fight big tech, who is censoring only conservatives. And Senator Brian Schatz, a Democrat, brought up a great point that basically it's bullshit, because what ends up happening every time Republicans do this is these social networks and social media companies and tech platforms get scared about the press they're going to receive, which obviously they feel like will result in sort of blowback from advertisers who want to obviously advertise on a neutral platform. And so they overcompensate. Facebook alone has hired a number of former Republican operatives and lobbyists in high-ranking executive positions within Facebook. We have seen actually in leaked emails, messages between backroom messages that are for only Facebook staffers. Zuckerberg himself basically come out and say that, listen, we need to be more lenient for conservative publishers because we don't want to come across as too liberal, even though most of our staff is more liberal, because most of our user base is conservative, and we need to obviously provide a product that's good for them. And the most telling to me was this clip, and I'll get into the whole hypocrisy of their battle against Section 230 now in a second. But let's get to this clip of, I believe it's Marsha Blackburn, right? Marsha Blackburn, Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn. She set up a nice little background, by the way, where she, during this, she was also zooming in from home during this hearing. And she basically threw her book up in the background so she could promote her book during this congressional hearing. But anyway, here is Marsha Blackburn with, she has about 5 minutes to say whatever she wants to these major tech CEOs, some of the most powerful people in the world. And this is how she spent that time.
Is Blake Lemoine, one of your engineers, still working with you?
Senator, I'm familiar with his name as an employee. I'm not sure whether he's currently an employee.
Okay. Well, he has had very unkind things to say about me. And I was just wondering if you all had still kept him working there.
Wow.
Right. Conservative cancel culture right there, right? I mean, this is someone who, no doubt, I've seen the tweets where she rags and rages against cancel culture. And here she is using her time as a senator in front of the CEO of Google to basically ask if an employee who criticized her is still working for the company or if he's been summarily punished for doing so, i.e. fired from his position. I mean, it's just ludicrous. And this is what it's all about with these guys. It's when it comes to, in general, but we're talking about the tech platforms here. It's all about personal grudges. They now see, like, usually, like I said, there's the whole overcompensating for conservatives on these platforms. However, we've seen in one specific area, which is really close to Trump's heart, where the companies are realizing they can't let conservatives get away with most conservatives get away with everything. And that's the spread of misinformation. And we've seen, especially this year with the pandemic, that these companies are saying, we can't let a lot of this stuff just freely go around because it spreads. It began, look at QAnon and a lot of these anti-mask sentiments with the pandemic. This stuff spreads, it gains followers, and it becomes dangerous. This misinformation is actually harmful to people's health. People can die from this stuff. So they're starting to actually take this stuff down. Facebook doesn't allow any QAnon content anymore. And what my opinion on this is, conservatives see this and they say, if we're going to lose our platform here, if we can't lie anymore, then we're going to make sure everyone else gets censored too. If we go down, we're taking everybody down with us. And that takes me back to Section 230. Conservatives want to roll back those Section 230 protections because what Section 230 does, like I mentioned, it protects the platforms to allow us basically to say anything that isn't illegal at the federal level. And by rolling back those protections, these companies will have to be more careful about what they allow. If you criticize a company, maybe Google or Facebook or Twitter will say to themselves, this looks like it could open us out to some lawsuits. We can't have them write this critical review of this company. We got to take this down, even though it has nothing to do with hate speech or misinformation. We just can't, it's too risky for us. Imagine YouTube not letting you share certain opinions via your videos, even, imagine you can't talk about aliens or Bigfoot conspiracy theorists on YouTube because they don't want to deal with any sort of legal liability from someone going out there and trying to find Bigfoot and getting hurt and coming back to sue Google or YouTube. And this will also affect you and your website, small website owners and bloggers and personalities online. If you're running a show like we do here on the Majority Report or with Antifada, Doomed, Literary Hangover, the Michael Brooks Show, etc. If a commenter on your blog leaves a comment and some company comes across it or some individual comes across it and they find that it's slanderous to them or it hurts their feelings or something, and they decide to sue somebody, you will no longer be protected by those Section 230 laws if they're rolled back. So that means those people can sue you too for some anonymous a-hole's random comment on one of your blog posts. So that's why this is extremely dangerous. I don't know, there's no way this isn't, and don't be confused here. Usually after these tech hearings, you see a lot of these opinions out there going, oh, it just shows how dumb and out of touch and old these Congress people are. You think Ted Cruz is so out of touch he doesn't realize what Section 230 would do? I mean, he knows. Ted Cruz isn't stupid when it comes to this stuff. He knows. So that's the play there. They want to, if they're going to be censored, they're going to even the playing field and censor everybody. And that's the ball game here. And I want everyone to be onto that. Even you people who aren't maybe so leftist, or someone who doesn't like, PC culture and thinks that someone like Ted Cruz is fighting for your free speech rights. He's not. He wants to censor everything you say pretty much, just so it's, just so the same rules apply to everyone.
These people don't give a shit about free speech. It's free speech for me and not for thee, which is why I think it's a mistake to look at a principle like this as some neutral thing in a vacuum, right? You have to look at who's using it and for what. And I feel like it usually redounds to the benefit of the right. There are lots and lots of other factors that you need to look at besides just is freedom of speech being restricted or not when you make a judgment call on a number of things. But let me ask you, Matt, because it seems to me like this is the same principle that was at play in Sesta Fosta. Is there a connection? Has anyone brought it up in reference to these hearings? By which I mean, I should explain this a little bit. By holding websites and platforms accountable for when sex workers place ads on them, these laws have effectively put a lot of people's lives in danger, because sex workers have had to move off the internet and into the streets, and it really hampers their ability to screen clients and keep themselves safe in all sorts of ways. So I'm just wondering if there's been any conversation around that.
There really hasn't, and that's a great point. I mean, a lot of, you would think that, again, if one of the major tenets right now on the far right, at least in the conspiratorial right, is this whole idea of sex trafficking, buoyed by the growth of the QAnon conspiracy theory. And for those of you who need a little update on that, QAnon is basically a movement where its followers and believers think that President Donald Trump is waging this secret war against a global satanic pedophile ring that just happens to be run by all of his political enemies, like the Hollywood elite and the Democratic members of the Democratic Party. So, you think they would care about that issue, but they just don't, because in their estimation, sex workers are leftists and bad, I guess. I mean, they don't think that. Also, you have to understand that this is also an issue where people just are uneducated. They personally see sex work, legitimate sex work, safe sex work, because it's still illegal due to the laws of the government. They view that as just as bad as, sex trafficking and things like that. There's no, they're not educated enough in this area to understand that, adults consenting to this stuff should be allowed to do it, and they should be able to do it in a safe and protected manner. To them, it's all bad. So, that's just, those laws are good to them. So no, you don't hear about it from them at all. I mean, it's truthful.
But I think you're right. Like, it is two prongs of the attack against, speech on the internet, right? Like, I've seen Section 230 specifically come up with regards to that, Jamie. I haven't seen it come up so much currently, but that is the exact same principle, exactly. And yeah, I think it is just like in the McCarthy era, where basically the government's like, oh, we have this insanely powerful propaganda machine in Hollywood, we need to get that under control. That's what they're maneuvering to do with this stuff too.
Right. I mean, I wish that we lived in a world where people could say whatever they want online, and everyone would be, smart enough and educated enough and understanding enough, and in a mindset where they could, just basically take it for what it is and think about it, and not go out there and harm someone else, harm themselves, and act upon it. But we don't live in that world. And I think we as a society have some responsibility to say, if there's someone is spreading stuff that will lead to someone getting hurt or hurting others, and people can die from it, then maybe those people should not be out there spewing this stuff.
I mean, I've seen so many, I forget what it is, elemental tonics, or like it's some kind of like alternative medicine sort of thing. I wish I could remember the thing, but it's like damn, but like it's like this sort of concentrated chemicals that like is supposed to be an alternative medicine, but actually you can poison yourself with it. And that stuff is that's Facebook. Like there's all this apolitical like poison too being transferred through Facebook. And like I don't really know, like fundamentally, like I think the start of this is you have to break these companies up from their like advertising sides of things, because it's like now that you have the most horrible propaganda machines in the history of the world controlled by monopolies that we don't really have a count over, like it's hard to know what the real solution here is.
Right.
Like I don't
like, I
know.
wish,
because like how do you even break up Facebook? Like you separate the timeline from the list of friends. Like I feel like it would be very hard to do that.
The first thing you would do is separate Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
That's ludicrous that they have those three platforms under
Oculus too while you're at it.
Yeah, I mean, just...
I'm sure they own all kinds of shit that they shouldn't be allowed to own, but like everyone is still going to use Facebook. Like, what do you do about that? I don't know. I've thought a little bit about this, and I'm still not totally sure what the answer is, but I'm not as much of a free speech absolutist as I used to be. And the idea of bringing these companies under some form of democratic control where the people get to decide what is too irresponsible to put on there, I would be pretty fine with.
Right. I mean, listen, I wish that someone could say on Facebook, oh, by the way, I think if you drink bleach, you can cure the coronavirus, and we could all let that sit there and all laugh at it together in harmony and unite, laughing at this one person's ridiculous thought. But the reality is, what would happen is you get 1 million people joining the Bleach Drinkers United to Fight Coronavirus Facebook group, and you would have, out of that 1 million people joining that group, 50% of them actually drinking bleach, and then a percentage of those people dying or getting very sick. And that's when you say, maybe we shouldn't let this stuff just go out there and spread and convince people that this is a legitimate scientific cure for coronavirus.
Well, I'd also say, like, you just got to attack like the power of these institutions, and I think like removing their ability to monetize ad revenue in our data to such a large extent, just legally. I think the EU is probably way ahead of us on this than we are. Like, we need to attack these companies as companies because they should not, frankly, be in the position. There's no way they could have done what's right, Frank. Like, there's very little. Like, I understand their impulse to censor that story we think was like the Hunter Biden story, right? Their impulse, because when you control these massive propaganda organs, you do feel some kind of accountability, and they felt compelled to do something. And then that itself revealed how much undue influence they have over all of this stuff. So like, we just have to, I don't know, like, it's disgusting to me that Mark Zuckerberg, after building a monopoly that destroyed our information infrastructure to such an extent, is now in the position where he gets to be the one to throw Section 230 under the bus. It's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's another conversation that usually comes out of this. I'm usually asked when we start talking about this is, but don't you think that suppressing certain sorts of right-wing misinformation and conspiracy theories, don't you think that the left will also receive some blowback? And we see that. I think the Jacobin had one of their live streams temporarily taken down after the live stream was over and the video was uploaded. It was temporarily taken down from Facebook for some reason, but it was reinstated. I mean, generally, no, I'm not worried about that, because if they were going to go after the left anyway, they would do it anyway, I should say.
Yeah.
There's nothing, like, they weren't waiting to take down the right wing stuff to go after the left. Yeah. I mean, that was always a possibility. And
there's
then also
no ombudsman out there making sure that the right and the left get treated the same.
Also, generally, I don't think we should be so reactionary. I mean, I wish the Jacobin didn't go out there and portray that they got, banned. Their video got banned, and it was in the text. It was they ran down what they were talking about, and it was one of it was like Marxism, another thing was Bolivia, and some people were pontificating on which one of those terms took them down that Facebook said wasn't any good. I mean, it's pretty clear what happened. One of two things: it got flagged for some reason by one of Facebook's automated systems. Someone brought it to Facebook's attention and they fixed it because it wasn't supposed to be flagged. Or B, someone reported it, or a number of people reported it, probably maybe even a right-wing campaign to take some of this stuff down. And it got temporarily taken down by this reason until Facebook saw what happened and put it back up. I mean, we can't, it sucks that stuff happens. But if we're talking about content being taken down for a few hours and Facebook quickly goes and fixes it and says we were wrong for taking it down, we really can't go out there and play the same game the right does. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, look, we are in an info war, right? And certainly I would like to have access to platforms unrestricted to spread my, subversive treason talk. But if the Antifada, God forbid, ever gets kicked off of the big tech platforms, I'll be like, oh, fair enough. We were arguing to overthrow the system, so the system it's going to bite back. But I think my point is we got to look at the outcomes more than the abstract principle, right? Right. I don't know. I believe in freedom of speech to the degree that it helps the people gain democratic control over society, and I think the speech of the ruling class should be ruthlessly suppressed. Sorry. Right. That's my tanky take for the day.
I mean, the funny thing is, while the right's complaining about their free speech when it's really their misinformation, lies, and deceit being taken down, the people on the left who say, "Oh, we have to be careful because that's what we do unto the right will eventually come to us." That's not actually the left's biggest problem with speech online. The left is usually most affected by copyright infringement issues and the DMCA. Remember when a bunch of major leftist Twitch channels earlier this year during the Democratic primaries got their channels got removed because of a DMCA request and all the debate footage that they had done during the live stream. And I remember I reported on that and I looked into it and I contacted Twitch and they told me basically what happened was someone pretended to be the copyright holder, filed all these fake requests, and their system listened to it. And they quickly worked, once it was brought to their attention, to reinstate all those channels and ban that fake copyright holder from using Twitch's system. So really what the left's biggest problem is copyright and those who are gaming the copyright system.
You got to give me some tips, Matt, on not getting kicked off of the big platforms and gaming the copyright system.
All right. Well,
maybe after the show.
What you got to do is, distort the footage a little bit. Don't make it full screen. Put it in like a little box inside of like a larger, like overlaid picture. And I'll tell you more later.
All right. Sounds good.